newspaper.
And I got that nickname from the Columbus Press because I had a fleet of hot dog carts downtown Columbus. In 1983, I was talking to a local reporter by the name of Larolyn Edwards, and she said to me, she asked me what I thought of White Castle's benevolence by sending 3,000 White Castles to U.S. Marines in Beirut. And I said, what a great idea. I said, you know what, Larolyn? I'm going to personally deliver 3,000 of my hot dogs to... She said, Harry, they'll never let you do it. I said, I'll bet you a cup of coffee. We shook hands, and the odyssey started. I called the White House, the Pentagon, Department of Defense, the Navy, I think State Department. Everybody laughed and said, forget it. You can't go as a civilian.
Mm-hmm.
2 days later, I got a call from John Glenn's office, and the girl said, you know what, Harry? The senator likes it. He wants to help. And it was like Moses parting the Red Sea in, like Charlton Heston playing Moses.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, doors became available and open, and I started planning to be in Beirut, Lebanon, Valentine's Day in February of 1983. I, of course, paid my own way. I talked most of my suppliers in shipping the product, or giving me the product, and I paid for the shipping. And I did have one problem. My travel agent flew me from Columbus, New York to London, London to Beirut. Except when I got to London that evening, I found that those flights were canceled 3 years ago. So I had to go to Paris to catch a flight the next morning to Beirut. And of course the product was already shipped, so I just had my baggage. And once I got to Paris, I landed, I think, at Orly, and the flight I had to take was all the way up the other side. It took about 3 or 4 hours to get to the other airport. And next morning I did go to Beirut. I was really nervous about the whole thing because I'm Jewish. I was born in Amsterdam. I came here as a refugee to this country. And I thought, what a great thing to do. Throw a hot dog party for these kids. And they were kids, they were 20, 21. I got to Beirut and I got to customs, and there were about 10 big Marines standing there waiting for Hot Dog Harry. They whisked me through customs, put me in a Jeep. We had a convoy to the base, and I started cooking hot dogs, and we really had a ball. Back in those days, they weren't worried about packages from home. I brought one soldier a chocolate cake from his mother right here in Columbus, and it was pretty wild. I spent a week there traveling all up and down the beach and all through Beirut at the time. There was some shooting. There was not anything like the second trip I took. But I promised these young men that I would be back in Beirut in December. And once I came back to the United States, of course, the press started asking me about my trip. The Associated Press was there. I guess I made every newspaper in America except the New York Times, and including, believe it or not, the National Enquirer. But I started planning right away for the December trip, and I thought, wouldn't it be great if I could bring beer to go along? I called Anheuser-Busch and they said, "You want what?" I said, "I want 1,000 cases of Anheuser-Busch to help with my hot dogs." They said, "You're not even a customer of ours. What?" I said, "I know, it's not for me, it's for the troops." Well, it took about 10 phone calls, and they finally said, "Here's the deal, Harry. We'll give you 1,000 cases, no problem. You ship them. You pay for it." I'm a little hot dog vendor, and I thought it was great until I found out that 1,000 cases is about 27,000 pounds of beer, and that turned out to ship it by ship was $5,700, which of course I didn't have. What I did have was a friend who has since retired from the New York Post, but he wrote a story, "Hot Dog Harry Needs Help in Shipping the Beer." And I got a call from World Shipping in Cincinnati, said, "We have a benefactor who wants to help." He's a Greek-born American citizen like you, being born in the Netherlands. And we got together on the phone. He said he wanted to help. We got the beer from Newark, New Jersey to New York. Can we cut for a minute?
Sure. Yeah.
The beer to be shipped out of New York City, and we had Peter Jennings on the ship with us, ABC Nightly News, Marine Corps Band, and of course 1,000 cases of beer. Off went this freighter with 1,000 cases. 2 weeks later, World Shipping called me and said, "Are you sitting down?" I said, "Did the ship sink?" And they said, "No." I said, "Well, whatever happened, it's salvageable." They said, "They went bankrupt." All of the product from all over the world was seized by the banks. My beer, or the Marines' beer, was in Piraeus, Greece, which is right outside of Athens. I called 10, 12 bankers, seeing if I could shake the beer loose. People, no way. I couldn't do a thing. I planned my trip anyway to Beirut. This time was December 1983. The young men that I had served in February 1983 was the same young men that were killed in the barracks bombing in October. There were 241 Marines killed by a suicide truck, and these were the young men that I had served when I was there in February. I got a call 2 weeks before I left from Senator Glenn personally, and he said, "Harry, this time I'm going to try and stop you. It's too dangerous. People are getting killed." I said, "Senator, I'm going." 2 days before I left, my insurance agent called me and said, "You're not covered. Anything that happens to you, you're on your own." And that was quite scary, but I said, I promised them I'm going, and I'm going. This time I didn't have any problem flying into Beirut, except that there was nobody there to meet me at customs this time. I was all on my own. We were going through customs, and the windows in the airport were shot out by 50 caliber machine gun bullets. And everybody hits the floor, we got glass all over us. And the guy says, "Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's over. Let's continue." I did get, the way I got into Beirut the second time was through the Lebanese embassy. The ambassador gave me what's called a visa de courtesy, which allowed me to go through the country with support of the Lebanese military. Once I passed through customs this time, I presented the letter to a colonel, Lebanese colonel, and I said, I need help finding the Marine compound. Well, they gave me an escort. We couldn't find it. And the guy said, I can't spend the whole day with you. We got other things to do. We're going to drop you off here. And he drops me off near the beach, and I start climbing a hill where I thought the compound was the last time I was there. And you got to picture this. I've got two big suitcases going to a Marine Corps base after they had been bombed. All of a sudden, the guy jumps out of a bunker. The guy's name was Dog Hrry from Ontario, Ohio, which is near Mansfield. He says, put your bags, he said, if you understand English, tell me right now. And I said, yeah, I understand English. He's got a machine gun on me. And he said, put the bags down, put your hands above your head, and walk towards me. I said, hey, I'm a citizen from the United, I'm here to throw you guys a party. All of a sudden the shooting starts, 50 cows. He jumped in the bunker. I'm standing out there. One of my suitcases was shot in half. That was the suitcase that contained cards and letters for the U.S. Marines from the Catholic schools in Columbus. That the Cardinal, Bishop, I think, was the Cardinal then here in Columbus. At any rate, he had arranged for the cards and letters. And I told this kid, hey man, I'm an American from Columbus, I'm from Ohio. I'm not staying out here. And he pulls me in the barracks, in the bunker. And he said, where are you from? I said, Columbus. He said, no shit, I'm from Mansfield. I said, well, you saved my life. He said, what are you here for, sir? I said, I'm here to throw you guys a party. I'm out Dog Hrry. He said, I don't know anything about it. I said, call the officer of the day. They called, captain came out, he knew all about me coming, and they inspected me. They said, you can't stay here. The State Department first said I could stay on a carrier, and that fell through. So now I'm on my own, and the State Department did recommend a hotel, St. John, and they did recommend a driver who lived across the street from the St. John. There were two big bunkers on each side of the street because the vice president of Beirut, of Lebanon, lived across the street. I checked into the hotel. It's an 11-story hotel. 3 guests were there. I was one of them. Again, this time it was just unbelievable. The week that I was there, I saw 18 people get killed, approximately. It was just like, it was a daily occurrence, just like Baghdad or any of the cities in Iraq today. I was walking down the street. I had full body armor, and when we traveled in the car, the driver had an Uzi and I had an Uzi. There was one incident when we pulled up to a red light, and people stopped for a red light. Buildings have been blown up. I mean, it was unbelievable. A motorcycle pulled up next to us, and there was a passenger behind the driver of the motorcycle, and they were wearing these helmets where you couldn't see the faces. And the passenger pulls out either a 9mm or a .45, and I just instinctively pointed the Uzi out the window, and they peeled off. I'll connect that later. But this time I was with the Marines again. Uh, the Navy had put all the product except the beer, of course, which was in Greece, in on a carrier because there was no refrigeration on the beach, of course. One of the sergeants there took me, and I've got a great picture of me in a Santa Claus outfit on Christmas Day. Back then I was very skinny and I had to use a pillow to get this belly up there. Again, we came under fire about 20 minutes later, and everybody's ducking for cover, and as a sergeant, I'm thinking that you gotta be nuts. I'm a Jewish guy walking around in a red suit on the beach, and he laughed. He said they wouldn't shoot Santa. I said, oh really? I did take the Santa Claus outfit off. The guys got a big kick out of it. I did too. And served the young men that were serving there. It was such an honor to be with them. And of course came back to the States. Oh, before I came back to the States, excuse me, I flew to Cyprus, and from Cyprus I had to change my plans. I was going to go originally to Israel, but I went to Athens so I could get, or make an attempt to get the beer. I went to the port. I had all the paperwork that the beer was mine, consigned to the U.S. Marines, and the Greek police said, here's how it's going to work. We'll give you the beer, $500 under the table. And I said, first of all, I don't have $500. I'm not paying you guys for my own beer. I went to the American Embassy in Athens, and they said they can't get involved. I said, you know, I've been in Athens, and there's an air base out in Glafada. Would you call the American general and have him help us? He said, that we can do. And he did. I forget the general's name. He was great. He said, when I told him the story, he said, you're goddamn right, we're going to help you. He got me 4 APs with shotguns, 2 deuce and a halves, and a sergeant that spoke and understood Greek. And we go down to the port again. I've been there the day before. Same cops are there, and they said, oh, Mr. Hrry, this time you come with friends. I said, yep. And the sergeant told them in Greek, we're not going to give you $500 on the table, but we will give you 20 cases of beer to sell on the black market. I said, okay, that's it. They put it in the deuce and a half, 2 deuce and a halves, and we went back to the base. There was a C-130 waiting to go to Larnaca, Cyprus. The Navy picked it up with helicopters, and I understand they had beer January 1st, 1984. Not too many people can say they bought beer for the whole Sixth Fleet and the Marines stationed there. That was very thrilling. I spent a couple weeks with my best friend in Tel Aviv, came back to Columbus to run my business, and now I get a phone call from a friend of mine in Florida. We had worked together, and he had been in Korea during the Korean War, and he said, Harry, you really want to go someplace you appreciate it, go to Korea. I looked into it, and they said, sure, no problem. This time it took about 10,000 hot dogs and served, I don't know, about 10,000 people in Korea. Unbelievable, the acceptance and the thrill of me and them to have somebody from the States come all that distance. Next trip was, before that, I was in my little hot dog office in downtown Columbus, and I got a phone call. Mr. Hirschinger, yes, this is the White House. The president is coming in Thursday. I'd like to meet with you around 2 o'clock. Is that a good? I didn't believe a word of it. I thought somebody's putting me on, my vendors. I said, ma'am, are you talking this Thursday? Yes. You know what? It's a bad day for me. I said, Tuesday would be better. She says, call us collect, sir. Would you do that? I said, sure. 202-445-1414. I still remember. I think that's it. Any rate, White House. Oh, man. Now, I said, this is for real. Spoke to the woman I had spoken to initially, and she said, is Thursday good for you? I said, anytime the president comes is good for me, and it happened to be Ronald Reagan. I said, can my children meet the president? Oh, sure. She said, David, Pamela, and Stephen, and are their social security numbers still? I said, if that's what you got, that's what it is. I don't know their numbers. He was speaking at the Hyatt, and he met my children first. And then it was my turn. And I said, Mr. President, it's really an honor. He said, Harry, he was very formal. He said, Mr. Hirschinger, we appreciate what you've done for the troops, and it's an honor for me to meet a great American like you. I said, thank you, Mr. President. He said, I was getting daily CIA reports on you while you were in Beirut. I said, CIA? I said, Mr. President, I'm a hot dog vendor. What were you getting reports on me for? And he looked at a Secret Service agent and said, he doesn't know? No, Mr. President, he doesn't know. I told you earlier about the motorcycle with the pistol coming out. Well, he said, Mr. Hirschinger, we had information that you were scheduled to be taken hostage by Hezbollah, and being Jewish and all, we didn't think you'd survive. Well, my knees really kind of buckled, and the Secret Service grabbed me and they gave me some smelling salts. I love my country, and I would love to go back and do the travels that we have done in the past, but I'm never going to go back to an Arab country again. I think I was watched over twice. I'm not going to tempt fate. I have made, to date, we have made 10 trips, 2 to Beirut, 4 to Korea, 3 to Japan, 1 to Moscow, and my good friend and board member Mike Vernon and I left this house with a police escort to Columbus International Airport, caught a plane, and we flew to London. From London we flew to Moscow, and we threw a party for the American Embassy at their invitation, of course. Quite a different welcoming and society than anything we've encountered before. There was nobody there to greet us, and Mike thought it'd be a good idea if I wore my 4-star general hat on the plane, and of course I was never a 4-star. Kids in Korea had a party and made me an honorary 4-star. I have a tie clip and I have a hat with 4 stars on it. And the Russians thought I was a real 4-star, and they stole my luggage and Michael's. And he kept saying, no, we can put a lost luggage. I said, Michael, it's gone. Our luggage is gone, forget about it. The embassy people told us when we get to Moscow, the first thing to do is change our money into rubles. Do not pay the cab people in rubles. Do not pay them in dollars, just rubles. Okay. There's 20 cabs out front, and I said, how many of you guys speak English? 2 guys raised their hand. I said, we'll go with you. How much is it to the American Embassy? He said, $30, and I'll only take dollars. What are we going to do? I mean, we're at the airport. Nobody's there. So I told the guy, there's no way we're spending $30. I'll give you 25. Mike grabs my arm and he says, you're incredible. You don't know where you are. You've never been to Moscow. What are you arguing about? I said, I don't know, Mike. I guess it's just the New Yorker in me. The guy settled for 27. Took us a block away from the embassy. He said, I don't want them to see me getting dollars. And Michael and I walked the rest of the way to the embassy. The Marines were all laughing because we had at that time 500 Marines at the embassy. And I said, you guys knew about our luggage? And they said, yes, sir. I said, it just happened. How do you know? I said, word travels fast in Moscow. We met the ambassador, his name was Jack Matlock, and he said, everybody you passed on the street coming to the embassy are KGB. And I said, Mr. Ambassador, I passed a grandmother pushing KGB. He said, you see that church up there, guys? We call it Our Lady of Perpetual Listening. He said, everything we're saying here is being recorded. The only place that's safe is my office. So it was quite something to experience all of that over hot dogs. And that was our last trip. We've put in our request to go back overseas this past 16 years, but so far no luck. I've got a letter in my computer to General Pace, who is the new chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and we'll see what happens. Did I answer all the questions that?
Yeah. What did they?
Well, yeah. About my brother and my dad meeting Hitler. I was born in Amsterdam. I was not in Germany prior to World War II. However, my older brother, who passed away a couple of years ago, was 9 years old when my dad took him to Berlin for a Veterans Day parade. And my dad was called up to the podium to meet the new chancellor, Mr. Hitler, who gave my dad 2 Iron Crosses for his bravery to the German people in World War I. My dad asked Mr. Hitler if it was safe for a Jew like him to stay in Germany, and he wrote out a little note. He said, Herman, a hero like you have my personal guarantee nothing will happen to you. He took the note to my mother, and she said, are you nuts? Took the note, threw it in the garbage. She said, we're getting out of here. This man's crazy. We've got to save the family. Well, of course, she was right, but who knew at the time? She and her sisters smuggled money into Amsterdam across the Dutch-German border, and the only time she and her sisters went, I understand, was rainy days, and the Germans never looked at the umbrellas. My mother had put diamonds and money in the stems, and that's how we lived for a couple of years before we came to America. My mother was very perceptive. My father didn't want to leave. He traced his family heritage to 1450 in Germany and just couldn't believe what was going on. but through her persuasion, we got out and survived. As I said, I was not in Germany. I went a couple of years ago with my wife, but my dad was from Germany, and it was really scary because my older brother that met Mr. Hitler, when he came to America, he was 11 years older than me, and he and my other brother signed up right away for the military. Kurt, who met Hitler with my dad, was in the 8th Air Force flying out of England, was shot down twice. The second time he was put into a prisoner of war camp. Would never, ever, ever talk about his experiences. The only thing he told us was that meeting when he was 9 years old. What was the other question that I skipped?
Oh, you just, what did they do before the war broke out? Got that.
My father was chief Jewish social worker, as I understand, of all of Germany, and made very good contacts with people in high places, one being the papal nunciate to Germany. Most people don't realize that the Vatican is a country, and they have ambassadors to every country in the world, just like the United States does, and France and Germany, and every other country, and their ambassadors are called papal nunciates. It was ironic that the papal nunciate, who was in Germany and who was a good friend of my dad at that time, was later to become Pope Pius during the war, and did some things, I guess, that were not ingratiating to the Jewish people. He had a secret pact with Hitler, from what I understand. You leave the church alone, we won't say anything about the Jews. That's my understanding of the situation. There's a couple books that have been written about it. I don't know what else.
The only other thing left is, one thing is about how many no's you got the first and second time to
How many what?
no's, like how many times you asked people and all the no's, and then also why you originally got in the hot dog business, and if you ever thought it would have taken you from Columbus to the DMZ in Korea and to Moscow, and if you would have done anything differently.
When I came here, I was selling clothing. When I came here to Columbus, I was brought up, raised in New York City, and the clothing business kind of deteriorated with the limited people, and Walmart, they just didn't need road salesmen anymore. They dealt direct with the manufacturers. And I saw the handwriting on the wall and thought, I've got to find another business to get into. Well, strangely enough, in 1975, I did research. TWA's most frequent route in the world was New York, Columbus, Columbus, New York. 250,000 people traveled on those in the world. I figured, what's more New York than hot dog carts? Obviously the 200,000 people that have been going back and forth must know New York City, and what's more New York than hot dog carts? So I started looking into it, and I really had a difficult time with the municipality, with the police, with safety director's office. For some reason, they thought it was not befitting. I always thought it brought an ambience to the city to make it a bigger city, but they didn't want any part of it. I had a very difficult time. My brother, my other brother, who was in the Marine Corps, was on Iwo Jima, was wounded there. A very talented businessman recommended that I fly to every city I could think of that had hot dog carts. I went to Portland, I went to Seattle, Chicago, Los Angeles. I spoke to about 10 owners of companies and made notes and took what I thought were the best of each company and embraced it in mine. And I had one car